So the Democratic convention is over. Did it matter? How is it going to impact this election? Let's start with a clip from CNN from last night.
About that. Right. But what I want to ask all of you all together at this point, like I said, none of you were ready to make a commitment to any candidate in November. Please raise your hand right now if you're now ready to make a commitment after today. Wow. I'm just kind of surprised about it. We haven't rehearsed this. I'm going to make that very clear. Maybe we'll adjust to this. 7 of you are now ready. Scott?
Yes, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris.
Andy?
Yeah, Kamala Harris, yes.
Donna?
Yes, I'm voting for her also.
Sean? Sean?
Yes, Kamala.
Sabrina?
Kamala.
Patrick?
Kamala.
Brian?
Trump.
Trump. And finally, Lindsay.
Still probably not voting.
You don't like either of them?
Nope.
Okay.
What led to you all making a decision? Was it that decisive of an evening, Scott?
Yeah, I really, as I said before, I really liked her confidence. She's really seemed presidential. She seemed very confident. Like I said, she spoke from her heart. I liked how she filled you in on her background, that she struggled, her mother struggled,
all right.
Middle-class family.
So what you see here is a room of undecided voters who mostly after seeing this convention and Harris's speech are shifting in her direction. And I tend to think that's probably the effect that this convention and Harris's speech has had, even if temporary, on a lot of undecided voters. You know, my one sentence review of the convention last night that I tweeted out was that the Democrats did what they needed to do plus about 30% more. What do I mean by this? Number one, they did the critical job of filling in the details of Harris's bio for an electorate that, even though she's vice president, don't know a ton about who she is and where she comes from. You know, they learned details like she worked at McDonald's, that she was a prosecutor. She had a great line about how she's only had one client, which is the people. Her husband, I thought, gave a very fun and kind of heartwarming speech. Her family member after family member got up and talked about her, and there were these biographical videos that were really good. So I think she did what she needed to do there at a time where the Trump campaign has really struggled to have a consistent line of attack to define Harris and her bio. Second, Harris tacked to the center. You know, a good example is how she talks about immigration. By and large, the Harris you saw last night is very different than the Harris of the primary campaign in 2020. And the Trump campaign is going to try to frame that as flip-flopping, and the Harris campaign is going to try to frame that as her growing / adapting and or listening to voters. Right now, it seems like the Harris campaign is winning that battle over defining the changes that she's made to her policy positions. The third thing they did was they showed unity. You had Republicans like Adam Kinzinger up there, and then you had Democrats who are on like the sort of more far left of the Democratic Party, like AOC, and then everybody in between. That really helps. You also showed a continuity of the Democratic Party from everybody from Bill Clinton to Barack and Michelle Obama, all the way through to Joe Biden to Harris, which I think is in contrast to Trump, who's kind of like an island unto himself. Like for better or worse, Trump's team would say for better, you didn't see George W. Bush or Laura Bush or Mitt Romney, the other nominees, or Mike Pence, his own vice president, get up on stage. So there's not this continuation of a story of like, who are the Republicans? How are they upgrading their ideology and the story of America? What's their record, right? They either made a conscious decision or because of Trump's relationships with the people I just described, did not display that continuity, whereas I think the Democrats did a really good job of that. And what Harris, what I think did definitely is say, all right, I am of a continuation of a tradition, but we are also the future. And she has somehow, even though being vice president, framed this race as her being the challenger, almost the change candidate, where Trump, having been president before, kind of feels like the more of the same, kind of like the incumbent. And for him to win this election, he's going to have to break out of that frame. Why do I say 30% more? Because I said I think that Democrats did what they needed to do, and then they did 30% more. I think number one is they got better ratings than the RNC, so they got at least Monday night 21% more higher ratings. I imagine that's only more true as the week went on. There was no major drama. There was all this talk about this being like 1968 and there being, massive protests that are going to disrupt the convention, et cetera. There were protests, but they didn't disrupt the convention or became a non-story. They also got some of the small details right, like little things like how did they do the roll call, et cetera. Like if you compare a lot of those little details to what happened at the RNC, the sort of stagecraft of it all was better, which is probably why the ratings were better. And then certain things like fundraising, like that yesterday, for a critical period of time, they were raising $1 million every 10 minutes at the Democratic convention. So just in terms of garnering critical resources, they kind of did what they needed to do. Now, what are the risks ahead for Democrats and for Harris? There are a few really important risks. Number one is overconfidence. As we saw at the RNC, that was basically a victory party. And then the Republicans and Trump made some of the worst mistakes that they made immediately in the aftermath of the RNC. In many ways, they haven't really pulled themselves out of the gutter post-RNC. So really important that this overconfidence doesn't lead to sloppy mistakes from the Harris campaign or from her supporters. Number two is that Americans like to build people up and then tear them down, or at least watch them fall. That is a bias that we all have, or not all of us, but a lot of us. And it's certainly true of the media. The media loves drama as a narrative. They're going to, there are a lot of reporters out there, even if they have liberal bends, their largest bias is towards the story they want to write about the Harris campaign in trouble, right? The vibes wearing off, right? That's the story they want to write. So it's up to Harris and her campaign or her supporters not to give them a lot of reasons to write that story. And obviously Trump's campaign is dying for them to write that story. So that's going to be their goal. The third thing that's a risk is this RFK Jr. endorsement, which is coming probably today, according to the reports. Maybe it's not an endorsement of Trump, but all reports seem to indicate such. That's about 3 to 5% of the electorate that's up for grabs. So that's a risk for Harris. 3 to 5% basically would decide any election that we've seen in recent memory. And then you've got the fourth risk factor, which is the debate expectations. All of this sort of hype around Harris, which in large part is good for Harris because that enthusiasm can lead to increased fundraising, more volunteers, et cetera. Also, I think builds up her persona in the minds of the electorate, and they're going to have high expectations for her when she enters that debate stage with Trump. And high expectations are dangerous in these debates. People expected Gore to be a great debater, John Kerry to be a great debater, Obama to be a great debater. And for a lot of them, that led to early stumbles at the debates when they didn't meet those expectations. So that's a danger for Harris. It's also a danger in the vice presidential debate because, J.D. Vance has basically become a punching bag for people all over the spectrum, it seems, even, as we've talked about here on the right. And everything he does, even this week, ordering donuts are picked apart like there's a Zapruder film. That is a risk for Democrats and for Walz because, if J.D. Vance clears a very low bar in that debate, he'll be rewarded for that. And so those are, that's the state of the race right now. Good week for Democrats, some definite risks ahead. They are manageable risks, but they are risks nonetheless. Excited to see where this campaign goes.